If you've been doing some research about potentially moving to Winston-Salem, you've probably heard a lot of the basic pros and cons. We've covered them before over the years here too. It's a great central location in the state, easy to get to the mountains or the beach. It has crazy pollen for a couple weeks out of the year, and in July and August it's hot. It's got really affordable housing and nice people, but we're not talking about all that today. We're not even going to talk about the crime that we've discussed multiple times on this channel, but it's been 6 years almost to the day that my sons and I packed up everything moved from the suburbs of Chicago down to Winston-Salem. We didn't know one person. Well, this pros and cons list is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be based on my 6 years of living here. And then through helping people buy and sell real estate, I've helped hundreds of others do the same thing. But I'm going to put a link in the description to a full pros and cons playlist, all the videos that I've made if you want to watch those. And if you're watching on your TV, you can just scan this QR code as well to see the full playlist of pros and cons videos. And if you do need help buying or selling real estate, my contact information is on the screen and it's in the description below. I'd love to help out. But let's get to the first pro of living in Winston-Salem, and that is the reinvention of the city. I'm shocked of how much I've seen just in the last 6 years of living here, how much development has gone on, and just how the city has gotten better. You know, Winston-Salem started out as a big tobacco town with R.J. Reynolds Corporation. It's still a good presence here, but the city has had to reinvent itself when a lot of those jobs went away and when that industry really shrank. And it was also in the textiles business that a lot of that kind of left too. So Winston-Salem went kind of through a lull through, the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. And people tell me that, 10 or 12 years ago, you probably couldn't even recognize the city from what it is now. It's done a great job just in the last 6 years that I've lived here of just continually reinventing itself and moving forward. You have Innovation Corridor and now Innovation Corridor 2. One of the big projects that I'm really excited for is going to be the grounds that will totally redevelop 100 acres near the fairgrounds. It looks like it's going to be an amazing project. Just the rehabbing of the Upper Silas Creek is going to be beautiful and bring a lot of natural beauty as well as commercial, retail, and residential space too. But the other thing is the city keeps making plans for the next 10 years ahead. 10 years ahead, they constantly talk about this. If you listen to any of the plans or any of the leadership, they're always talking about what are they going to do better 10 years from now, 10 years from now, and it's just gone that way over and over. It's been really impressive because not only do they talk about it, they find ways to execute on it. Now, do they execute on everything perfectly? Of course not, but the city does an amazing job at reinventing itself. It's become one of the top spots in the country to retire to because of its affordability. It has a great younger presence with all the universities and colleges that are around here. A thriving art scene, it's big in biomedical research, and it's working hard to attract bigger and better employers to the area to bring more quality, high-paying jobs as well. The city and Chamber of Commerce has a lot of detailed written plans on how they're going to do this over the next few years, whether it's the 2030 plan to make Winston-Salem one of the best places to raise a family in the entire Southeast, or the city's plan to make Winston-Salem more walkable, or the plan to continue to reinvigorate downtown with well over $1 billion still in development downtown. The city just does an excellent job at reinventing, keep moving forward to make the city itself more attractive for businesses and residents. Now, the first con about living in Winston-Salem is I find that it still kind of tends to compare itself to other cities. I see this happen a lot from people that have lived here either their whole life or have lived here, 20 plus years, because yeah, Winston is doing this good and it's doing that, but it's not Raleigh, it's not Charlotte. I'll occasionally have a client do this when they come into town to visit. Oh, it's not like New York or XYZ city where I came from. It's totally different. And I have to say you have to kind of expect that, and it's not really fair to compare itself to other cities, but there is kind of this feeling in the city, like I said, mostly from people that have lived here for a long time, where it's almost like this kind of second city mentality, or we're not quite there yet, or that maybe they just aren't used to the progress that's going on and how much the city is getting better because they're always looking out. But it does seem like there is a little bit of a vibe sometimes from people that have lived here for a long time of like, it's good, but it's not quite this or that. And of course that's true. It's not even fair to compare Winston-Salem to some of these other cities when one, it's a fraction of their size, or it's just kind of on its upswing where those cities are way more developed. So I think for people to compare, it is a little bit of a con because you can kind of feel some of that in the city. Not really fair, but is what it is. All right, the next pro I've noticed about living in Winston-Salem since I moved here is it has a really strong local economy. Unemployment rate that's consistently below the national average, and rising wages in the city where cities that people like to compare it to, Raleigh and Charlotte, those wages have actually been going down. Winston-Salem has steadily been seeing wages increase, and I've had more than a handful of clients tell me they came from this city in, sometimes these are bigger cities, Boston, San Diego, Austin, Texas. They come here, get a job in their field, and they're making the same or more in a city that's way more affordable than where they came from. And this spans a lot of the job sectors, whether it's healthcare, blue collar jobs because of the construction that are going on, more specialized jobs, retail, small businesses, all that stuff like that. The economy is just really strong here. The other thing to that is the governments, and this includes the suburbs as well. The governments tend to manage their money really, really well. Where I moved from, it was deficit spending, shortages on this, problems with that, decreasing revenue here, and how are we going to handle that because people are leaving instead of people coming. The city has its budget, it runs it very well overall, and again, that includes the suburbs. They don't run into big deficits. They have funds set aside for infrastructure and things like that. Like when they redid 421 a few years ago, all those funds were taken care of. They were set aside. It was allocated in advance, so when the project came, it was paid for, it was done. I mean, it was totally different than what I came from when I moved from Illinois, so it's just good to see a strong local economy. The next con about living in Winston-Salem that kind of goes with that, I wish we had one or two other large employers that would come and make an impact on the city. I think it would be good for a lot of reasons, and I do think it's kind of lacking right now. See, a lot of businesses that have started here, whether it was like Wells Fargo, Krispy Kreme, even on a different scale, they'll start in Winston-Salem, grow in Winston-Salem, and then move away to a bigger city. They'll go to Charlotte or Raleigh or something like that. That makes it hard because some of that talent that helped build and grow those companies leave with it. If there was one big employer that came here brought a good amount of high-paying jobs, not only would that be good for the local economy, but that brings other high quality people to the area and that gives the city more money for amenities, which would be great to reinvest back into infrastructure and all those good things like that comes along with stronger employment. And the city's chamber, Greater Winston-Salem Inc., does a good job at promoting the city. It's starting to turn somewhat. We're seeing some companies come here and make really big investments in the area. The Toyota battery plant, not in Winston-Salem, but still is going to be near here. It's going to bring a lot of jobs. You have now announced that Jet Zero is coming to and possibly going to come here with 10,000 jobs to build low-emission jets. Also in the aerospace industry, Boom Supersonic is right here in Greensboro, kind of in between Winston and Greensboro. That is going to bring a lot of jobs here. So things like that's going to help the aerospace industry in this instance to really grow, bring more high-paying jobs here that will attract more and better talent, again, to bring in more revenue for the city. I think would be great. They're kind of going in the right direction. I just wish it moved a little bit quicker. Next pro I've experienced about living in Winston-Salem is just the overall lifestyle. It has exceeded my expectations at almost every level. When I moved from the suburbs of Chicago, everything was crowded. You couldn't get anywhere because there was always traffic. It was always hustle and bustle. The lifestyle in Winston-Salem is just different. You still have a city, albeit a smaller city. You still have city and city amenities and things to do, but the quality of life here is just a little bit slower. People tend to kind of take their time, relax, go a little bit slower. Sometimes that works against me because I'm more like, let's go. But overall, the lifestyle is just a touch slower, which is great. But even though the pace of life is a little bit slower, you still have tons of city amenities and everything that goes along with that. You have a huge variety and diversity of people here. Almost any kind of neighborhood you would want to live in, whether it's downtown condos, suburban, rural, urban, city condos and townhouses, master plan communities. I mean, it's got everything you would want for a city. But then add in a legitimate art scene that is here if you're into any kind of arts, whether it's performing arts, visual arts. You have the history of a city that's over 200 years old and all those things that go along with that, historic buildings and just history itself. And then just an amazing amount of outdoor activities you can do, whether it's the miles of greenways and trails within the city or, hikes, kayaking, sailing just outside the city. And again, whether you are coming here to retire or you're coming here for a new job with a family, it has that lifestyle that is going to match all those different subsets, whatever you might be into. There's just kind of a lifestyle plug-in that you can find and a community that you can find that I think has just made my lifestyle here better than I imagined, far better than where I moved from. And I will say that's been a little bit of a surprise to me, a pleasant surprise, but I thought, I'm moving to this southern state, it's going to be the South. And it's not quite that. Yes, it's in the South, but it's not just this slow, sit on the rocking chair on the front porch, South, drink your sweet tea. Not quite that either. The lifestyle has been great. Now, the next con about living in Winston-Salem that I have experienced is the city too small? And let's be real about this. It's a city of 260,000 people. It's not a 500,000 or a million like some of these other places or multiple millions. So there are trade-offs that go along with that. If you're looking for a 24/7 hustle bustle lifestyle, where the clubs or whatever is open till 2 and 3 in the morning. I mean, if you go downtown at 2 in the morning, it's dead. There's not much going on at all. And Winston-Salem has some good shopping here at Thruway Shopping Center. It has really kind of reinvented itself as well with some really nice shopping. But if you want to go to IKEA or an Apple store, you're going to have to go to Charlotte or Greensboro or something like that. You're going to have to travel for some of those bigger city amenities. Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Costco, we have all that stuff like that. But if it's any of those big major things, you're probably going to need to go somewhere else. We don't have a major airport here, so you have to go to Charlotte or Raleigh if you want a big airport. What I've started doing now and really grown to love is going just to Greensboro. It's simple to get in and out of. The con with that is there aren't a ton of direct flights out of there, so trade-offs. You know, sometimes the city feels like it's a little small. Wish it was just a little bit bigger, but I guess you can't have everything. I think the important part, and what I've seen people do well and not well when they've been here, again, helping hundreds of people relocate here, is really have your expectations right. You know, find your everyday lifestyle items that you need to do on an everyday basis. If you have to fly every week or twice a month or whatever for work, it's going to be different. You know, going to Greensboro, which is not that Greensboro's far, but you're going to need to connect somewhere and you're going to go somewhere. If you're going to have to drive down to Charlotte for that flight, that's going to be a real thing for you. If having every different type of ethnic food that you can imagine is really important to you, you're going to be lacking that a little bit here. The good news is Greensboro's 30 minutes away. High Point's about 20 to 30 minutes away. So when you combine all that in, it does give a little bit more, but each of those cities do have its own kind of distinct feel, but none of them are really that big city experience. And, you know, spoiler alert, I would just say even Raleigh and Charlotte don't have the same big city experience. Yes, they are bigger than Winston-Salem, but they don't have a big city experience like, you know, where I moved from in Chicago, just not the same. Or if you come from any other big, really large city, no place in North Carolina is like that. There's all just smaller cities. Cities, yes, but smaller. Next pro I found about living in Winston-Salem is it just feels like home, and it did that quicker than I expected. Have you ever been somewhere, moved somewhere, and you refer to the place that you used to live as home and not necessarily where you are? Oh, I'm going back home to XYZ. Winston-Salem has grown on me so quickly in a shorter time than I expected. And I've talked to tons of clients that really just feel the same, whether it's how friendly the people are here or finding your specific community and whatever you're into. If it's church, hiking, whatever you're kind of into, like those, you can find your community here, and the people are warm, welcoming. About half of them, it seems like, have come from somewhere else. So don't be afraid if you're coming from Boston to Winston-Salem and like, oh man, am I going to fit in? You will fit in. You'll be able to find your people. It really starts to make it feel like home. And I was given some advice a long time ago, and I will give you the same advice. At some point, kind of home is where you make of it, and the area is what you make of it. It does take a little effort or getting outside your comfort zone a little bit if you're more introverted to go out and meet people and connect people. But I promise if you do that, I haven't heard one person that says, oh, the people have been jerks to me. I can't find my XYZ community, or I just don't fit in because of this or that. I have not seen that. And again, helping hundreds of people move here, it really does feel like home for lots of people. And it does that really quickly. It's one of the great charms about the city. All right, the next con about living in Winston-Salem, and no, I'm not going to say the weather, because if you've watched any of these videos before, you know I can kind of get a little complainy about the weather in Winston-Salem. Specifically, the winter goes longer than I think it should. The last couple of years are beginning, not all the way, beginning to change my mind on that. They have kind of really gone how I thought a winter in the South should be. We haven't had any of those drawn out winters where it'll get really cold in like April or something like that. Hasn't happened in a couple of years, but I'm digressing. The next con about living in Winston-Salem is everything is easy to get to, but you have to drive a lot. This has become kind of a running joke. You're 10 to 15 minutes from somewhere, but you're 10 to 15 minutes from everywhere. There aren't just a lot of central, walkable neighborhoods to get around to. And if you're going to any of the places that we talked about before, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Costco, likely you're going to have to drive a few minutes to get there. And guess what? If you live right next to Costco, Trader Joe's, about 10 minutes away. If you live in Clemens and you want to run to Target, guess what? It's probably 15 minutes away. And you're probably going to have to get on the highway and go on the highway for a few minutes. Simple to do. Don't get that wrong. It's easy, but you're going to have to go there. So if you're thinking of moving here, I always tell people, think of your major lifestyle things, you know, whether that's a school you want your kids to be in or the shopping or restaurants you want to get to. Try to get 10 to 15 minutes from 80% of that stuff. I think you can do that from just about anywhere, depending what you're into. Find that and then kind of work your search out from there. It tends to work really well for people, but just plan, you're going to have to drive to most places. And if you're thinking about buying or selling real estate in Winston-Salem or anywhere around the surrounding area, I'd love to be a resource for you. You can reach out to me directly at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.